Scroll 3. The Mandate of the Seven. By dawn, the decision had been carved into royal decree. King Icarus stood before the high tactical table in the war room, staring down at an ancient map of Albion, a map that separated the world into 7 distinct, isolated territories. 𝕊𝕚𝕒𝕼𝕼𝕼 cannot stand alone, the king declared, his voice echoing off the stone walls of the war room. If Winston's words hold true, a conventional war will end in our total annihilation. We need the raw elemental fury of the outer biomes. We need their steel, their magic, and their monsters. He looked directly at Isolde and Valerius, who stood side by side at the foot of the table, an icy wall of silence firmly established between them. You two will ride out together, King Icarus commanded, his eye shifting between his children. You will traverse the dangerous outer paths. You will go to the deserts of Solaria, the oceans of Oceania, the frozen peaks of Glacia, the skies of Stardusk, and the wilds of Florina. You will secure their allegiance by any means necessary, through diplomacy, through leverage, or through blood. Valerius sneered, his hand resting on the pommel of his broadsword. And leave the capital undefended while we play diplomat to beasts and pirates? My place is here, leading the vanguard against my treacherous stepbrother. Your place is where your king commands, Icarus roared, slamming his palm onto the map, rattling the lead tokens that represented their borders. Esmeralda will remain here to reinforce the stone battlements of the 7th realm. Winston will purge the castle walls of any hidden cultists. You will do your duty, Valerius, or I will strip you of your title before the sun sets. Isolde kept her gaze fixed on the map, specifically on the dark, painted patch of land that represented Penumbra. Her mind was a chaotic storm of memories. She remembered the war years ago, when the sky was choked with smoke and the earth shook with the heavy march of ironclad armies. She remembered fleeing into the dense undergrowth, her breathing ragged, her body trembling with fear, until Valentine had found her. He had protected her, he had shared his meager rations, kept her warm by tiny, hidden fires, and looked at her with eyes that felt like home. She had believed, with every fiber of her being, that they were just two lost souls surviving the collapse of the world together. Now, she realized that every gentle word, every warm touch, had been a calculated deception. He had known exactly who she was, and he had been using her presence to shield his own dark ascension. We leave at noon, Isolde said, her voice dropping into a cold, hard register that surprised even Valerius. She looked up at her brother, her eyes completely devoid of the warmth she once possessed. Prepare your horse, brother. Let us see if the world outside our walls is as eager to die for Valentine as he is to destroy it. Scroll 4. The Ash of the Fallen. The heavy iron gates of the 7th realm groaned as they swung open, allowing Isolde and Valerius to ride out into the gray, mist-choked expanse beyond the royal valley. A small royal escort followed at a distance, but the silence between the prince and princess was heavy enough to smother the sound of the horses' hooves against the damp earth. Their path to the outer biomes required them to make a perilous crossing through the sacred war grounds, a massive, sunken valley that sat like a scarred crater between 𝕊𝕚𝕒𝕼𝕼𝕼 and the dark tree line of Penumbra. It was a place of permanent winter and ash, where the soil was stained a deep, unnatural charcoal from the magical fires of the last great sovereign war. Broken shields, rusted halberds, and the shattered bones of ancient siege engines rose from the earth like jagged teeth. You still mourn him, Valerius stated, his voice cutting through the whistling wind. He did not look at her, keeping his eyes fixed on the narrow, rocky trail ahead. The monster flashes his teeth at our father's table, and you ride in silence as if you have lost a saint. I do not mourn him, Isolde replied sharply, her fingers tightening on her horse's leather reins. I mourn the fool I was when I believed his lies. There is a difference, Valerius. There is no difference in the eyes of a sword, Valerius spat. A traitor is a traitor. When the time comes, I will sever his head from his shoulders, and I will expect you to watch. Before Isolde could answer, a low, guttural click vibrated through the foggy valley. The horses whinnied in sudden panic, rearing back as the loose shale beneath their hoofs began to slide. From the shadows of the rotted siege towers and the hollow ribs of long-dead war beasts, shapes began to crawl. They were feral ghouls, the spirits of soldiers corrupted by the lingering dark magic of the old battlegrounds, their skin gray and leathery, their fingers elongated into bone-snapping claws. Ambush, Valerius bellowed. He vaulted from his horse before the animal could throw him, his broadsword clearing its sheath with a ring of pure steel. Two ghouls lunged at him from the fog, their jaws snapping with unnatural speed. Valerius met them with ruthless, military precision, sidestepping the first to cleave it cleanly in two at the waist, before driving his pommel into the skull of the second. But more were emerging from the mist, their numbers overwhelming. A massive, twisted brute of a ghoul lunged from a collapsed iron cart, catching Valerius from behind and slamming him hard against a stone monolith. The prince's sword spun out of his grip, clattering into the ash. Isolde did not hesitate. She dropped from her saddle, her hands extending toward the earth. Though the soil of the war grounds was dead, her raw nature magic forced its way through the crust. Thick, blackened briars and thorned roots erupted from the ash, twisting like striking vipers around the brute's throat and limbs. The thorns dug deep, tearing through the leathery hide with a sickening crunch. With a sharp pull of her hands, Isolde snapped the roots, crushing the creature's windpipe and dropping it lifeless to the dirt. Valerius scrambled to his feet, retrieving his broadsword, his breathing heavy as he looked at the shattered remains of the monster, then back at his sister. For the first time in his life, there was no arrogance in his eyes, only a grim, unspoken realization that this journey would require every ounce of the bloodline's power.